It was a beautiful day in my neighborhood. I was at the park with my sons, who were then 1 and 3, and there was another mom there with a son about the same age as my 3-year-old, who was having a jolly time rolling cars down the slide. I was lonely and eager to talk to another adult, especially a neighbor with a young son. So I opened with, "My son could just play with cars all day. I never need to buy any other toys. What's your son into?" She responded, "My son is more interested in the alphabet." I said, "Oh," and I went back to playing with my kids. What I thought was, "Oh really? Your child is so advanced he just sits around and learns to read? I'll just go back to my illiterate son and make car noises with him." I felt judged and definitely not compatible with this mom, my neighbor. But let's take another look. Maybe what she meant was, he likes playing with refrigerator magnets. Or maybe he really was a precocious reader and she was bringing him out for a much-needed break from his studies. I'll never know because I didn't ask. Instead of getting curious and asking her if her kid was actually some kind of genius, I quickly decided she was not friendship material. Who's the judgy one now? And maybe I totally imagined her snooty tone. Maybe she thought, I thought she was trying to connect. What did I say? I would love the chance to revisit that scene and ask her, "Won't you be my neighbor?" This is the How She Moms podcast with Whitney Archibald. I'm a mother of 5 on a mission to help moms connect with your kids, manage your homes, and create your own unique version of motherhood. I curate ideas from different moms so you can pick and choose what works for you and your family. After last week's episode about dismantling the mommy wars, I thought we could use an episode dedicated to how moms support each other. Partly because, as I interviewed moms about mommy wars, they kept telling me these lovely stories of support that far outnumbered and outweighed the stories about conflict or misjudgment. I'll share many of those stories here and save some for October, when we'll spend the month talking about making friends and cultivating those friendships. If you have stories of friendship to share, please email me at whitney@howshemoms.com and we'll set up a time to talk. I'd love to hear your friendship challenges and successes. Before we jump into this episode, I want to talk again about How She Moms Summer Camp. My family has been testing out the first week this week, focusing on food, and it's been really fun so far. Each week of the 6-week program will focus on a different skill to help kids learn how to take care of themselves. And each week will include several family activities to choose from, so you can pick what will be most fun for your family or do them all if you want. It will also include daily and weekly challenges with little videos you can show your kids. You can sign up for the first week for free at howshemoms.com, and I'll send you the printables and outline for the week, plus a link to sign up for the rest of summer camp if you end up liking it. Okay, back to this episode about supporting other moms. I've organized it into 10 tips with clips from 16 different moms and one dad with ideas about how we can support each other. And just for fun, and because he has so many great things to say on this topic of supporting and loving one another, I'm going to include a quote from Mr. Fred Rogers to go along with every tip. Each week when I play the piano at our local hospital, I play the arrangement of the Mr. Rogers Neighborhood theme song that I played in the intro, just as a little reminder to be good neighbors. I'll start with this Mr. Rogers quote for the first tip. "Some days, doing the best we can may still fall short of what we would like to be able to do, but life isn't perfect on any front, and doing what we can with what we have is the most we should expect of ourselves or anyone else." So the first tip is to compare in a healthy way. You might have expected me to say that we should stop comparing ourselves to other moms, which is also what I expected myself to say. But the more I thought about it and the more women I talked to about it, the more I realized that comparison is inevitable and can even be healthy. It's when criticism comes in that comparison gets dicey. Here's what Chanel Nielsen, a life coach at ChanelNielsenCoaching.com, has to say about this.
Yeah, my daughter is always saying like, "Oh, don't judge." She'll get on us if she thinks we're judging at all. But I really think the whole thing about judging is like we can't judge people, but we have to judge. Because we have to make decisions. And so we have to judge, is bottle feeding or breastfeeding best for me? And that's the judgment. But we have to somehow do it in a way that we don't like, okay, it's breastfeeding and you moms who aren't doing it are the worst. We have to somehow do it in a way that like validates other choices and allows other things to be right.
Yeah.
But we have to make judgment calls all day long.
Comparison can be useful. It helps us clarify our values. It helps us learn. It helps us decide what we want to do differently than our own parents and other parents around us. and it helps us decide what we want to emulate from other parents. It's a critical component to forming our own unique parenting styles. I love the story Rachel Nielsen, host of the fabulous 3 and 30 podcast, told me when I asked her about comparison.
And I think sometimes now when I see other mothers behaving in ways that I don't want to behave, I don't at all judge them.
Yeah.
It helps me to see myself more clearly. So like I saw mom the other day, I was on an airplane and her little boy was so good the whole time. But at the end, he got a little fussy and she kind of lost it on him. And I was like, how often do I do that? That I don't notice how good my kids have been for so long, because as an outsider, it was so obvious to me that the mom was overreacting, but I didn't judge her. I just thought, okay, Rachel, you need to stop doing that to your kids, because you need to sort of be an outside observer of your interactions and recognize when you're doing that. So yeah, a little judgment of your, like, not judgment, but a little evaluation of others and of yourself is good because it helps you to improve. And I have a younger brother-in-law who he's much younger. So he's just getting married and they observe all of us with their kids. Yeah. And I know that they're judging a lot of what they see. And sometimes I'll start to think, oh, I hope they're not judging me for this and that. And then I think, of course they are. And you know what? In 10 years, they're going to laugh about the fact that they judged us for the stuff when they have it and they're going through it. They're going to think, oh, remember when we judged our brothers and sisters and nieces and nephews? So it all comes around.
Yep. And in turn, we're helping them for good, better or for worse. We're helping them develop their own value system.
Yep.
And if that's different than ours, that's okay too,
Yeah, totally.
I love that she brought up the pre-parenting stage because that's probably the apex of judginess of other parents. The I will never do that stage. How quickly we learn. This segues nicely to our next tip. Put each other in context. And here's what Mr. Rogers has to say about that. Love isn't a state of perfect caring. It's an active noun-like struggle. To love someone is to strive to accept that person exactly the way he or she is right here and now. Here's Jessica Jackson, a mother of 4 young children and the host of the Thriving in Motherhood podcast. She says that often
you're comparing your chapter 2 to someone else just chapter 19. And I think so often that's where the mommy wars come out, because we're comparing each other in different phases. And then we make judgment calls unnecessarily based on those different phases of our lives. And we're just all in different chapters. We're in all different seasons. We all have different capacities. Let's roll with it. Let's lift each other up. Let's face it together.
Not only are we in different stages, but we have different children, we were raised by different parents, we have different talents and different belief systems. Here's what Renee Rena, a mother of a 3-year-old boy and the host of the Mom Room podcast, has to say about this.
And looking at someone else's decisions and situations and being like supportive of it and not judgmental and not being like, oh, I could never do that. And it's like, okay, but that's you. That's your life. Like, they live a completely different life. So yeah, just understanding that every family situation is different and we're all just trying to do the best and do not focus on things that don't matter.
Yeah. And the world is way more interesting because of that diversity.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I've been on both sides of judgments made out of context. I had one of those I would never do that moments when my kids were all in elementary school and a friend's middle schooler would not go to school. After watching this play out one morning, I thought, oh, my kids will not have a choice. I would never just let them stay home. Fast forward to having my own middle schoolers who just wouldn't get out of bed some days or faked sickness to stay home from school, and I realized they're way too big to drag kicking and screaming into the school building. For that matter, just this week, I couldn't get my first grader to leave the car, again, even with the help of a school counselor trying to convince him. There was nothing wrong at school, he just wanted to be at home. Even though I told him I would just be working and he wouldn't be able to watch TV or get any other perks. He eventually got bored at home and went to school by 11:30. On the other side, a friend and I were comparing notes on a couple of our very strong-willed children when another friend walked up. She listened for a minute and then just kind of gasped and said, I just would not allow that kind of behavior. My friend and I just looked at each other in support, knowing that this shocked friend of ours with her very compliant children had no context for our struggle. The third tip is to use your social superpowers for good. In the last episode, How She Dismantles the Mommy Wars, I talked about a fascinating discussion we had on the How She Moms Facebook group about how moms judge each other. One of the most interesting comments was this from my good friend Wendy Sanders. She said, "I just had a thought. Has any dad ever judged another dad for how he fathers or whether or not he works too much or too little? It seems to me that that doesn't happen often, if ever. Anyway, just wondering what they're doing right. Is it purely societal structure or is it something else? Are they more secure in themselves? I don't mean this as a men versus women comment. I'm sincerely wondering if how they go about life allows for more freedom from judgment and if there's something we can learn from it. We should be the best cheerleaders of everyone. Why do we struggle with that so much as a group?" I loved this question so much because it came from a place of pure curiosity without criticism of either women or men. As luck would have it, the very next week I was interviewing a male therapist, Craig Nippenberg, who also hosts the Legit Parenting podcast. I thought he might be able to help me answer her question. We talked about how a lot of the reason men don't criticize each other's parenting is social. They're not held to the same standard of parenting as women. A guy who takes his kid to the coffee shop is applauded for the very act of being out in public with his children, while a mother in the same situation would be analyzed, evaluated, and even criticized. These social pressures and different standards are very real and very infuriating. But his next point about why women may judge each other was more unexpected. It has to do with our social superpowers. He says,
"Women's brains have this tremendous speed of interpreting others' emotions, looking at their faces, recognizing what they feel, what others feel. Now, the part of the brain that does that, the mirror neuron system, it's about the same for elementary kids. So little boys and girls can be quite empathetic towards each other, both genders. But at puberty, the mirror neuron system in females just explodes in growth. And it becomes, there's twice as many neurons in females' brains there are men, what are called mirror neurons. And mirror neurons collect. I think of it as like designing a stained glass window. They collect all the little nonverbal stuff going on with the interaction, your facial expressions, like just the look in your eyes, the nod of your head, all those different things, the quality of your voice, the tone of your voice. Women pick up a ton of that. And so they design these, on the right hemisphere is where you put it all together. And they design this incredible stained glass window on how to behave or how to act socially. And it's sped up by estrogen. So the more estrogen you have, the faster you do it. Jeff Foxworthy, the comedian, he said, when it comes to social processing, women have an 8-lane superhighway and men have a 2-lane country road. And neurologically, that's accurate. We don't have nearly the bandwidth for emotions or recognizing nonverbal, and we do it a lot slower. So the simplest thought in middle school, I talk about how do you decide where to sit in a classroom, open classroom, or you're a college kid? How do you decide where to sit? The average guy's gonna be like, I don't know, I just sit in the same place every day. I never thought about it. Or, well, I sit in the back because I didn't do my homework, right? The average female is going to have a lot more thoughts about how they're picking their seat, who's friends with who, what the social pecking order is. Not that guys can't have those. We can be aware of those too, but women just, it's so much more and it's faster. And I call it the female superpower. Your ability to recognize other emotions and to act on those with empathy. Females really have such a great capacity because of that mirror neuron system that you literally have this superpower. Now, you can turn it in really cruel ways. So the classic mean girl.
Yeah.
A mean girl is someone with great nonverbal processing, just amazing, and knows everybody's secret pain.
Yeah.
And then they go for it. And then they push that button over and over again. And they're just cruel. And they often have great presence. They take their time, they think, they plan, and then they go for the jugular every time. So that's that capacity, that superpower, to turn negatively. That's where it's turned to the negative.
Yeah.
Versus using it to build community, to be in harmony with each other, right?
The Mr. Rogers quote for this one is, "We speak with more than our mouths, we listen with more than our ears." I thought we needed a good example of someone using these social superpowers for good. Here's Dr. Annalisa Jones, a gynecological surgeon, talking about how her best friend knew exactly what she needed after having her first baby.
My best friend, if I had called her saying, I'm having trouble breastfeeding, and instead of saying, okay, take a breath, hey, what are you watching on TV? Or, oh, let me tell you this story from today, trying to distract me. If she had been like, well, what's wrong? Are you not doing that? Oh, well, I don't know. Okay, I have to go. I cannot imagine if that is what I had gotten from her, but I didn't. I got time, I got acceptance, I got, love. I mean, like she never like really tried to fix it per se. She didn't like analyze it. Like the next time, well, what do you think it is? Do you need to go to the doctor? Do you need, she didn't try to do that. She just supported me. Like she was just there.
Yeah.
And some people, personality wise, are just better at that than others. I think, and I think there is a time to say, I think you need to go see your doctor.
Yeah.
Whether it be mental health or physical health.
Yeah.
So.
And here's a bonus Mr. Rogers quote, because I love this example of how Annalisa's friend listened and empathized instead of trying to fix things. Listening is where love begins, listening to ourselves and then to our neighbors. The fourth tip is to end the adversity Olympics. The fabulous author of the books I Miss You When I Blink and more recently Bomb Shelter, Mary Laura Philpott, used this phrase, Adversity Olympics, on a recent episode of the What Fresh Hell podcast, and I had to pause the episode to write it down. Isn't it so weird how we humans compete for who has it the hardest? My kids do this all the time, with things from actual injuries to hardships like chores. And we moms totally do it too, competing for who is busiest, who works hardest, and even whose kids are the most challenging. Here's what Devin James, one of the co-hosts of the Word to You Mother podcast, has to say about this, specifically about stay-at-home moms and working moms.
Well, since I've been able to see both sides, I feel like, just everybody has their own view of like being busy. Like, working moms are busy at work, stay-at-home moms are busy in the house, and, momming doesn't stop 24/7. So they have that in common. You're a mom, whether you're at work or not, like it doesn't stop. So just like being supportive of both sides, because even with your title that's different, at the bottom line, you still have to be a mom and be a parent.
The best way to end the Adversity Olympics is to recognize that it's all hard and we all need support, rather than competition or judgment. Of course, Mr. Rogers also has a good reminder for us here. He said, often out of periods of losing, and I'll add struggling, come the greatest strivings toward a new winning streak. The fifth tip is to be kind to yourself. Here's good old Fred again. When we love a person, we accept him or her exactly as is. The lovely with the unlovely, the strong with the fearful, the true mixed in with the facade, and of course, the only way we can do it is by accepting ourselves that way. One of the pivotal moments of my tweenhood was when my mom sat on the side of my bed and taught me the principle that when Jesus said, love thy neighbor as thyself, it has to start with loving yourself. Bryce Reddy, a therapist and the genius behind the Instagram account mombrain.therapist, reminded me of this principle during our conversation.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that can go back to just like how we talk to ourselves, being able to remind ourselves that, I'm feeling this way because I feel vulnerable. I'm feeling like very judgmental of this other person because I'm feeling vulnerable about my own choices and unsure about my own choices. And it's not necessarily about them, what we're thinking. And when we're feeling that kind of judgmental inclination, it can be very easy to kind of like just want to project it out further. But really kind of taking it back to yourself and be like, well, why am I feeling like that? Why am I feeling kind of competitive or judgmental? And what is that saying about kind of me and my feelings about my own choices and, where I'm at in my own life?
Yeah.
Which is hard to do.
I think one of the ways we can be kinder both to ourselves and to other moms is by following the next tip. Recognize intentions. Here's Devin Smitty, a mother of two and a parenting coach with Megan Thompson Coaching.
So much more now I'm able to see even people whose actions I so deeply disagree with, I can still relate to them on the motivation level because they're a parent too.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I just trust at the most foundational level that you're motivated by love for your child. You might be showing it in a way that I don't understand or agree with, but I can understand that. I can understand why you're so passionate about it, for example, because you'd run through a wall for your kid. And so would I. I get that now in a way. You just can't understand till you're a parent. So, it's made me a lot more flexible in my compassion for everybody, not just kids, because everyone's someone's kid.
I love this emphasis on intention. I can safely say that anyone listening to any parenting podcast, and also the vast majority of mothers out there, have good intentions and are doing our best, within our own limitations, to help and love our children. That goes a long way in helping us to relate and support each other in our mothering efforts. As Mr. Rogers says, anyone who does anything to help a child in his life is a hero. And being clear about our own intentions helps us give ourselves that same grace that we give other moms who are doing their best. Anna Zupanzik, a mother of 4, talked about this.
I think for myself, it's knowing what I want things to look like in the end product. And having 4 different kids, I know that their personalities are all very different, and how I parent them reflects who they are. And so I have a lot of respect for other parents whose kids have very different personalities, and they have to pivot and they have to take a different direction where they need to. I'm thankful for that. I learn a lot from them. It's not a competition. It's like, wow, I can take that. I can put that in my motherhood tool belt. I can apply it. I can use it. I can discard it. I think I have a lot of autonomy in the decision-making there. And again, like a clear concept and a clear direction of where it is that I want to head and take my family. And so because of that, not everybody's on that same journey, or they prioritize things differently, and that's okay. And so I guess just for me, I have a confidence because of the intention and the direction that I know I'm heading in.
Number 7 is to learn from other moms. Mr. Rogers again, if you could only sense how important you are to the lives of those you meet, how important you can be to the people you may never even dream of, there's something of yourself that you leave at every meeting with another person. For this tip, we're going to sit back and listen to Brooke Romney tell about how she stopped negatively comparing herself and started learning from other moms. Brooke is the author of the book I Like Me Anyway and 52 Modern Manners for Today's Teens, both of which I've read and love. Incidentally, we didn't realize until after this interview, but we actually knew each other our freshman year of college. Here's Brooke.
I moved to Arizona into a master plan community with, hundreds of families that were just like ours. And so that actually started out as a little bit of a comparison time for me. So when I left Virginia, I thought I was awesome at motherhood, like just so good at it. I had nobody to compare myself to, and my baby was alive, and I had faux painted my whole entire basement. So obviously I was doing things right. And then I moved to Arizona, and there was a lot of comparison in my own mind because I saw women who did things a lot better than I did, and who did a lot more than I did, and who had more kids than I had. And but what I realize now is they just had a lot more experience and knowledge. They were better at things than I was because they had experienced more things than I had experienced. And so I started off that stage in kind of a low spot. Yeah. And then when I realized that the key to loving that stage was connection for me and learning, it changed everything. And so that was I spent about 6 years there, and it was such an intense time of learning for me. I learned from moms who were stages ahead of me. I learned so much. I became someone that I never even expected that I could become. And it was all because of these women who taught me so much about motherhood and homemaking, and also about self-care and self-development and finding talents and interests. And then we spent hours and hours and hours together at pools and parks and exercising and just really creating an enjoyable way of being a stay-at-home mom. Now, it wasn't like all lovely. I remember calling my husband almost daily being like, so when do you think you're going to get home today? Because it was hard and it was intense. I had 3 boys in 3.5 years. So I had a lot of little kids, and it was really, really an intense time. Yeah. So that was one of those times. But I just really was grateful for what I learned, and just the examples that I had of great mothers who were doing things well. And I could have gone back to the way I felt in the beginning and just been jealous of the fact that they did things well. So when I made that switch to what can I learn from you? And then also, like, what can I bring to the table? I didn't have a lot of skills I could bring, but I was really good at gathering women. So I started gathering women. I created a lot of park days and play groups and pool days and outings, and brought people along in my motherhood journey so that I could have company mothering the way I wanted to mother. So it was really, really a fantastic time.
You can go back and listen to the rest of my interview with Brooke in episode 41, How Brooke Romney Learns from Other Moms. Catherine Griesman, a therapist and mom to one daughter, told this beautiful story of a mutual friend, the wonderful Siobhan Wood, who came to the rescue to teach her in a vulnerable time.
I had so many lovely people that helped me, and other women, that recognize you're struggling. And you probably remember Siobhan.
Yes, I love Siobhan.
She worked in labor and delivery, and so I was really struggling. And she had a third child like probably 3 weeks before I had Anna. And I look back on this now and I'm like, what an angel, and it was Spokane and it just started snowing and it just didn't stop, right? It was such a miserable winter, but I was struggling, and she had offered, she's like, if you need any help, let me know. I'm happy to help you. And I finally sucked up my pride and asked her for help, because I had never seen anybody breastfeed before. I didn't know what it was supposed to look like even. And I was seeing lactation, but that's different. But she trekked out in the snow with her 3-week-old and came to my house and breastfed him in front of me and showed me what to do. And I had Anna and we were there. I was like, Siobhan, we're real bosom buddies now, because it was amazing. And and it would have been, I didn't know, this was a few weeks in, that Anna had some specific things that were getting in the way. But it was like, I just look back on that and I'm like, that must have been hard for her. She had 2 other kids at home and a husband that was trying to work, and she comes over because she's a lovely person and I was struggling, and she's trying to be supportive. And she gave me permission too. She was like, none of it's wrong. If you want to use the nipple shield, that's fine. If you want to do a bottle, that's not wrong. And that was so helpful. I needed to hear that. Let go of your story, Catherine. It's not wrong.
Number 8 is to celebrate the variety of other moms. As Mr. Rogers says, as human beings, our job in life is to help people realize how rare and valuable each one of us really is, that each of us has something that no one else has or ever will have, something inside that is unique to all time. It's our job to encourage each other to discover that uniqueness and to provide ways of developing its expression. Let's start this tip with a clip from my conversation with Whitney Thomas, a longtime advisor to this podcast and a mother of 4. For her, motherhood coincided with the advent of social media.
When I had Austin, I got my first iPad, and we did not have smartphones yet. And so I remember I had my first iPad, and I had a Pinterest account. Pinterest had just started. And so when I think about that in terms of that's what my mothering has been the whole time, has been between social media, and I guess I had a Facebook account already when he was born. And so I look at that and I'm like, my whole mothering has been done from this place where you can see what everybody else is doing, but you're seeing their highlight reels. And so it's real. I just feel like it has robbed me in a lot of ways of not being prepared to just silence that and just be really content, be in where with my kids and with what I'm doing, and forget because I think that comparison element, you make up this fake person that does all of the things, all of the things that you see, you have this person in your head that does them all. And so you're comparing yourself against someone that's not exist. And it really does rob you of all of the joy that can be found in knowing what your strengths are and being present with your kids without worrying about, all of the things you could be doing or should be doing or, whatever else.
So we have a choice here. We can feel overwhelmed by this imaginary conglomerate person, or even the one person who has talents you don't have, or we can be liberated by it. Because since it's impossible to have all the strengths and talents, we can feel free to specialize to our own strengths and let the other moms do the rest. Here's Joy Chantry to talk more about this.
We're all on our own little learning curve and have things that we struggle with and things we're good at. And I think that's just what we all need to come to terms with, is yeah, my sister-in-law is an amazing knitter. I can't even handle the thought of knitting. I've tried it. It's way too slow. I can't even handle it.
Yeah.
I need like immediate gratification. But her sweaters are beautiful. For the things that she makes are amazing. So I think, yeah, we just need to accept where we are and appreciate that. And then you can have the freedom to love other people.
And not only to love other people, but to celebrate what they do well and be proud of what you do well. Joy then brings up another great point.
There is such a kickback on the Pinterest world, which I totally agree with. Like, I feel like, no, the reality is nobody lives like that, right? Everyone shoved the crud off the counter before they took the picture. Like, I'm all about that. But I also feel like sometimes, because those are I like doing things that are visual, sometimes I feel like it's not okay to have that talent. Yeah. Like, people are kind of like, they don't even want to, talk about it or hear about it, because it's like, it tenses them up.
You can find some of Joy's great ideas at joysfunstuff.com. Devin Smitty brought this up too.
I think there's almost this weird counterculture thing happening right now that's making like the sloppy, I don't care about anything mom, like really, it's like idolizing that too. And I think that comes from the hot mess mom. Yep. I think that comes from a good place. Like, I think they're trying to like give permission to moms to like let some stuff go.
Yeah, be real.
Right. But then it's also almost like creating shame around, like, if you are a mom who cares about nutrition and you do like make home cooked meals, or like my husband and I are really into home decor. So like one of the things we've done for both of our kids is their rooms are really cool. And that's a creative expression for us. Like, we really love it. And sometimes I find myself like almost embarrassed for people to see my kids' rooms, because it's like not the cool thing to be that way. But that's something he and I always imagined and dreamed of for our kids. That's just one small example. But and I think that's kind of a bummer for moms too. It's like, let them have a moment where they get to like really step into what they imagined themselves as being their whole
and celebrate
lives.
That.
Yeah.
Isn't that so interesting? While I appreciate the people who keep it real on Instagram, I also think we can use the platform to showcase the cool things we're doing and the great ideas we have. Especially when so much of the work moms do is invisible and unrecognized, it's nice to have a place to share best practices and what's working well, along with the real moments of struggle and even failure. Most of all, we should celebrate the sheer range of what motherhood can be. Here's Dr. Annalisa Jones again.
Oddly, our culture preaches tolerance, but really the scope of what we consider, quote, normal is really narrow.
Yeah.
Really narrow. I mean, we could get into all kinds of stuff with gender and with this and that if you do not fit into this very narrow category of what is deemed normal, then you're abnormal. And what does that add to? Guilt.
Yeah.
You look at your kid and go, well, but little Johnny's not he can't sit still in class. Well, he must have a disorder, and that disorder must be my fault somehow. Well, maybe he doesn't have a disorder. Maybe he just doesn't like math.
Number 9 is to find your tribe. Here's that quote from Mr. Rogers. All of us at some time or another need help. Whether we're giving or receiving help, each one of us has something valuable to bring to this world. That's one of the things that connects us as neighbors. In our own way, each of us is a giver and a receiver. One of my favorite interviews so far was with Wendy Castellanos-Wolf and Alexandra Rosso, co-hosts of the Mamacita podcast and professional flamenco dancers. I asked them if they felt judgment or support from other moms.
I think I felt pretty supported once I found my mom community, but that's what it is. You have to find a mom community that fits, right? Like, I'm not going to go hang out with the moms who are, very strict about what the kids eat, because then they're totally going to judge me about what my kids are eating.
Right.
So I wouldn't put myself in that situation. You kind of have to find your squad, right? Like the
Find
squad
your
of
people.
moms,
Yeah.
that you will relate to, that your kids will, relate to as well, because we mom in a village, right? So like, if this other mom is doing totally the opposite of what you do, that your child is not going to relate to that mom. So you kind of have to find your squad. Yeah, I don't think I've been a part of the mom wars.
Yeah, no, I haven't experienced that at all. I've always felt very supported.
Good.
And I think it's also, like Wendy said, because of the people that I'm around, everyone understands my situation. My mom friends, we have very similar parenting styles, I think. We do our thing and the kids are there. The kids kind of accommodate to what we do.
You can hear the rest of their interview on episode 62, How Wendy and Alex Pursue Their Passions. Of course, finding your tribe can be easier said than done. As I mentioned before, we're going to focus the whole month of October on building and cultivating friendship. The early years of parenting can be isolating and it can be hard to get out. Add in a move or a new job and finding a supportive tribe can be really difficult. And then when your kids pass the playdate stage, you have to be even more deliberate about your own friendships. As I was researching for this episode, I discovered a book called Women Are Scary by Melanie Dale. In it, she compares finding mom friends to dating, even down to rounding the bases. First base is meeting and making small talk at kids' activities, school, or the park. Second base is deliberately scheduling a meetup at a park. Third base is a play date at one of your houses. And fourth is actually getting together without your kids. It's a process and it's work, but it's worth it. I love how simply Jessica Jackson explains her approach to friendship.
I just want to be nice. And so I hang around people that are nice. It's typically what I try to do as an adult. But I think the other thing is just like, I've been so proactive about the work of friendship. And so for me, it's just like, no, we're friends and this is the work of friendship. And so lots of serving, just like letting it go both ways, interdependent relationships, like we are going to do lunch together. Let's do lunch together at the playground, or, calling those friends regularly and staying in touch with people, even though we don't live close anymore. I've got a friend that I call every night while I'm making pizza, like just doing the opposite of mommy wars, just being really intentional about friendship.
And these days, friendships aren't even limited to people that you know in person. You can also cultivate a virtual tribe on social media, which is our 10th and final tip. At this point, if social media makes you lonely or discouraged about motherhood, it just means you're following the wrong people. You are in charge of what you see, and you can curate your feed to follow only feeds that fill your cup and help you feel seen and supported. Here's Devin James again.
Social media, I feel like that's another thing that's like kind of bringing moms together too, because you're seeing all these reels of these funny videos and you're just like, I'm not by myself. Like, it's not just me that's going crazy, having a meltdown and coming back like, what's up? Everything's fine. So it's like, everything's normal. Like, you're just normal things. Just have a breaking point and then taking a minute and then coming back and like, everybody's looking at you like, are you good now? Yes, I am.
Bryce Reddy and I also talked about the positive side of social media.
Now I think that there is so much more openness about these feelings. Kind of, we're not just getting the people walking by us at the grocery store or on the sidewalk telling us how wonderful it is. We're also hearing kind of another, end of the spectrum. So I think there is kind of like a gift in that in a lot of ways, that there is kind of more people recognizing the signs and symptoms early, and more people talking about like the less, positive parts of becoming a parent.
Yeah, I think social media has evolved in very positive ways toward reality and authenticity.
Yeah, it's been an interesting thing. I have kind of, you can look at it from two ends of the spectrum. Like, I think that there is kind of like reality falls somewhere in the middle of what we see on social media. Like, I think we see like the really bad stuff and I think we see the really good stuff. And there's a world in the middle that probably is where most of us live. But it's, I think especially in the maternal mental health field, that there has been a lot of positive change.
Bryce is definitely part of my social media support group. If you don't follow her at mombrain.therapist, you should. As we wrap up this episode, I just wanted to remind you that the trap of judging other moms can be easy to fall into, and it can also be contagious. But the great thing is the opposite is also true. Giving ourselves and each other grace and support can also be contagious. Let's spread the love because, as Fred Rogers said, everyone longs to be loved, and the greatest thing we can do is to let people know that they are loved and capable of loving. Thank you so much for listening to the How She Moms podcast and for being part of this community. There are so many other ways for you to connect and hopefully also contribute. I share tips and ideas regularly on Instagram and Facebook at How She Moms. You can find past episodes and other resources at howshemoms.com. And you can always just email me directly at whitney@howshemoms.com. Special thanks to my own wonderful mom, Susan Singley, for recording my theme music. She played this song all the time when I was growing up, and to me, it's the soundtrack of motherhood.